Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Turpeau, and I am excited about the guest I have today. As you know, I do this show, the Dr. Turpeau Show, where I interview people who have exciting stories, interesting stories, and people who have succeeded in different areas of life. Today, I have a very interesting guest. As I've known him, as long as I've known him, he's always had interesting stories to share. I find him to be a very intriguing person. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy this one today. Before we get started, though, as I usually, I like to ask people that if you like this video, please click like, as well as to click the button that says share. You know what? We hear these stories and, we enjoy these stories. We're inspired by these stories. But, you might think of someone else who is in that industry or is going through something similar. Please click share and forward this video to someone else that you think may actually enjoy and benefit this story. So, and as always, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. So enough of all the preliminary things. I am looking forward to today's interview. And so today's interview is titled, Who is Michael Mike T. Thomas? He is the host of the LoveZoneUSA.com. And so I'm eager to get started. So let's jump right in. Okay, so Mike T., what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great, Dr. Turpeau. It's glad to see you and know that you are now a technological guru.
Oh, man.
I know who to ask for help now.
Yeah, that's, I'll go ahead and take it. That's not deserved. I'll take it. All right, so let's just jump on into the interview today, and we'll just start from the beginning. I think that's always a good place to start.
Okay.
So just tell us a little about you. Where did you grow up, and what was it like for you growing up where you grew up?
Grew up in Newark, New Jersey. At the time, it was back in the 50s. And childhood was really, I have to say, had a special childhood. Both parents went to an elementary school, and that's where I found my love for music. With a instrument called the flutophone. For those of you who want to check it out, you just Google the flutophone. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see that. It's similar to a clarinet, but it's like a toy. And that's where my love of music started, trying to play that. And I'm sure any parent who knows when they give a child a new instrument, they have to suffer through that period of them learning it. And that's where it all started, Miller Street School. I then went to Clinton Place Junior High after Dayton Street, and Clinton Place was where Mr. Muskie, my music teacher, said to me, instead of playing the clarinet, which I eventually picked up after the flutophone, he said, "Why don't you play bass clarinet?" And I'm like, "What's a bass clarinet?" So teachers have a way of migrating you towards something for whatever reason. I think it was a need for him. It wasn't for me at the time. So
right, and this is New Jersey you grew up in?
Yeah, New Jersey, and Clinton Place was Newark, New Jersey. So that's where the real music started. I took up a bass clarinet, which I wasn't familiar with at the time. It was a gentleman named Benny Maupin, who was a jazz bass clarinetist, and I followed in that footsteps. At that time, we put a band together, and it was called you can tell by the name how old I am. It was called the Del Satins. That's what we called our band. Satin shirts, black pants. The instrumentation, when I think back, was very unique. And I know that for a fact because I'm going to tell the story about the guy from Atlantic Records who wanted to sign our band to our recording contract. So at the time, all you heard was guitars, Rolling Stones, Beatles, et cetera, et cetera. There was a song, Hang On Sloopy, by Ramsey Lewis, pianist, that we emulated, because just like today, bands go out and emulate what's popular on the radio. The instrumentation was bass, string bass, drums, piano, tenor sax, trombone, and myself, bass clarinet. Wow. Very unique instrumentation. But to hear it, those instruments combined in like a jazz ensemble was just so unique. And one assembly, I don't think it was assembly, it was a concert at night. Naturally, the kids invite their parents.
Right.
After we played, there was a gentleman that came back from Atlantic. They called them talent scouts. Then when I got into the music business, that guy would have been in what they call the artist and repertoire department, A&R. And he said, "You guys are really great. Want to bring you to Atlantic because my boss said, I'm tired of these guitar groups. Find something unique. Tired. Everybody coming in is, because everybody was emulating the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and guitars and Jimi Hendrix. And here's a unique band with a very unique instrumentation playing popular music off the radio."
So this is late 60s, early 70s?
Yeah, this was 67, 68.
Okay.
And because my junior high school went from 67 through 70.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I graduated high school in 70, so it was about 66, 67, 60, yeah, 3 years.
Okay.
So while we were there, had this offer, but unfortunately, that offer kind of broke up the band. Parents at that time were, not really conducive to the idea of kids possibly getting into music and leaving school and the travel and the talent. So it kind of broke up the band. I then went on to Arts High, which is actually, from what I understand, it's the first music and art school in the United States. Wow. And Melba Moore graduated from there. And in order to get in that school, you had to take a test for music. So I say that to say that a lot of people don't know I was a musician first, and played bass clarinet there in the orchestra, the band, and graduated. But one of the interim pieces was what I really enjoyed. Every day, like a day like today, we'd go to the fourth floor, and musicians would jam before homeroom at 8:30. We had some of the best musicians. I wish we had cell phones with video. What I want to tell the youth today: record everything, document it. What Dr. Turpeau is doing now, we couldn't do back then. And I'm going to tell you, Dr. Turpeau, he was some of the best musicians you'd ever want to hear.
Wow.
This before homeroom every day. We would pack the fourth floor. Students just came to the fourth floor because, it wasn't scripted. And we had these musicians. One of them I definitely want to, give props to, a guy named Myron Smith. This guy, he was born with an impeccable ear. My music teacher, Mr. Pessel, one day had him play a song, Exodus. That's what it was, Exodus. He played it in one key, and then Mr. Pessel would point to another key, another note, and say, play the same thing in that key. And Myron could do it just by ear.
Wow.
He was an amazing talent. I used him on a few of my recordings. I do have one of his recordings that I did later on in life, but he's just an amazing musician. What I will say to you, there's a young kid today who has produced probably 8 or 9 gold platinum albums. I interviewed him on my show because I knew his father. And his father is named Curtis Hudson. Curtis Hudson, he wrote the song Holiday from Madonna.
Okay.
So the apple didn't fall far from the tree. The kid said, when I grew up, I want to get one of those gold albums like my father. Well, he has probably 8 or 9 gold or platinum albums, has worked with everybody in the industry. And there's a video of him right now playing behind Justin Timberlake. And Justin is singing a Donny Hathaway song.
Okay.
And if you hear this kid play the piano, you are hearing Myron Smith. Because he said on my interview, I said he went to the church that Myron played at. And I asked Eric, I said, well, Eric, do you know Myron? He says, yeah, he influenced me a lot. Wow. And if you listen to this kid who has worked with some of the biggest names in the industry, Alicia Keys, you name him, he's worked with them. And now he's working with Justin Timberlake, and that's a video on YouTube. You'll hear Myron Smith.
And what's this kid's name?
Eric Hudson, gold and platinum producer. Primarily, that's what he does right now, writes songs and produces for many, artists in the industry. And that's my props to Myron Smith, because had he not, he's always been a gospel musician. Had he got away from the church and done more secular music, the world would have heard him, but they're hearing him now through his legacy.
All right, excellent. And so you graduated high school about what year?
1970.
1970. And the high school years, those are fulfilling music times, fun times for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I played basketball. I was a co-captain of the basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
So I had two things pulling at me at the same time. Music, I was naturally good at. Basketball was a little more of a quiet sport, but I was pretty athletic, and graduated and went to Montclair State. And that's when life, the highway of division came along.
Wow. Okay. So tell me about that. When you went to Montclair State, what was that like?
Montclair State was, my brother went there, and I followed in his footsteps. And I thought I was going to be a music major. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I was playing a lot of basketball. I played on the high school team, but I wanted to make the college team. And at the same time, I was going to declare a major. And I was a little confused, but I took liberal arts. But my basketball, I started growing because I was pretty much a short kid. Mm-hmm. But by the time I got in college, I sprung up. I was 6'1". Wow. And a buddy of mine who I played with in high school was already there. He was playing for Montclair State, Bruce Davis. And he definitely wanted me to try out. Long story short, I was working out with Bruce just about every day. And there was a guy that I just gave tribute to on my Facebook page named Bob Duquette. The story goes, I was playing. Bob was a white guy, came into the gym while I was playing, just shooting around. He said, could I shoot around with you? I said, sure. So he started shooting, warming up, and this guy was hitting threes like Steve Curry. Mm-hmm. I seen it live in advance. Mm-hmm. So he said, you want to play a little one-on-one? Because he noticed something about my shot. I said, sure. So we played one-on-one. He beat me like a drum. Game of 12, it was 12-3. Needless to say, long story short, I walked over to him and said, who are you? I mean, you should be playing pro. Then he told me about his college background. You can look him up. The last name is spelled Dukiet. He was an assistant coach at Montclair. And he said, you know what? You have to change your shot if you want to be more consistent. Instead of shooting with your elbow out like this, shoot it with it in and follow through. And that's what he was doing. Oh, well, it took me months, but I eventually beat him one-on-one. But it took months and a lot of practice. Yeah. The other part of the story was I was shooting so consistently, I went over to what we call Rucker Park in New York. Mm-hmm. That's where all the pros would come and play during the summer. And that summer I was playing against Walt Frazier, Earl Monroe, Connie Hawkins, Nate Archibald. And I'm telling you, Dr. Turpeau, I just knew I was going to be a pro. We beat those guys. We actually, a playground team, we beat those guys. You call next, and they would be out there balling. Most people don't know Dr. J, that palming the ball off the dribble with one hand, he got from a guy they call Helicopter, who was a great, legend in the playground. His problem was he had a wine problem. And back then, you couldn't play in the pros with any, they didn't have the addiction and everything they have for ball players now. And they called him the Helicopter because he would, off the dribble, palm the basketball and then wave it around when he went to dunk. Doctor didn't get that piece, but he got to palm it off the dribble and dunk it. Yeah. And he was on our team. He was a legend, and we beat them. And when I came back to Montclair State off that summer, I was flying high. And my skills, I put a lot of work in. I think I was working more on the basketball than the music. But to make a long story short, I kind of showed off in the scrimmage, scored 35 points, and got cut. What? The guy who was playing me is a guy named Brendan Sir. He became Chuck Daly's assistant coach when Chuck Daly, Detroit Pistons, won the championship with Isaiah Thomas and those guys. And I know if I had Brendan on any interview, he would say Mike was a great ball player. Wow. Back then you couldn't showboat. It just wasn't. It wasn't like it is now, where where guys could do what they're doing. So it was just the time and the era.
Yeah.
And later on, I just eventually I dropped out of college. My mother and father got separated. I never got my degree, and I started in the world of work. And one of the things that I missed out on saying when I was in high school, I used to go every Monday night to a place called the Village Gate on Monday nights. They used to have a jam session. And I would go there to what they call strengthen your chops. And I was playing with guys like Charlie Erling, Jimmy Smith, Ron Carter on bass. These were legends when I was in high school. And I was playing my bass clarinet with them, and that's where I got my jazz chops. And that'll come later when I tell the story of me getting in the music industry and working for CBS.
Okay. So you left college, and so what happened next?
I had an incident when I worked at ADP, Frank Lautenberg, who eventually became a senator in New Jersey. He was the president, and he started ADP, him and his partner Taub, in the basement. And I was a rising star, started off as an expediter, because if you didn't have a degree, you had to start off in the expediting department. I did. I was handling and ADP handled payrolls. And I was very good at my job.
ADP. Can you tell the viewers a little bit what that company is, ADP?
Automatic data processing. They just processed payrolls for different companies. And this was back in 1972, my sophomore year, left and got my job there. So then I was processing payrolls, and that story is pretty unique too, because I got promoted to the customer service department. Was there for about 3 months, and I was friendly with everybody. Everybody knew me because when you expedited payrolls, you know, you had to go through every department from data processing to, you know, the finished payroll being delivered to the customer. And this is the first time life hit me that said, for anybody listening to this interview, if you don't have a clear path as to what you're going to do when the fork in the road is like this, and deciding whether you're going to get a degree or not, this is that fork in the road. So I didn't have a degree. I got promoted to customer service. 3 months later, John Murray said, Mike, step into my office. And I said, yeah, John. And he had introduced me one morning to Frank Lautenberg, you know, kind of rising star kind of thing, working his way up from the bottom. And John said to me, he said, John, Mike, I got to let you go. I said, why? I'm doing a great job. You said that, you know, a couple of weeks ago. He says, well, I've had some rumblings in the department. Everybody in the department has a degree, and you don't. I said, but you promoted me. He says, yeah, but word has it, if you don't leave, then there's going to be mutiny on the balcony.
Wow. I
said, whoa. And that was straight from the, you know, my boss's mouth. So I got laid off. You know, we worked out a package where I could get laid off, get unemployment. And that was a fork in the road of my life. Do I go back and get my degree, or do I continue to work? And I decided to work. And the decision I made, for anyone listening to this, it's very important. That decision was to say to myself, from now on, I'm going to take a job where I get paid for my effort versus, you know, a salary. And I decided to go in sales.
All right.
And at that time, I applied for sales jobs, never sold anything in my life other than my little lemonade stand when I was a kid. And I had a shoe shine box where I, you know, went to the barber shop. And after the interview, about 2 days later, I was laying in bed and I got a call. And they said, would you like to come in? Plaza Ford. That was my first job, which that was the trajectory of my career in business. And they said, you know, we think you're going to do real well. And I said, you know, why do you think that? They said, well, out of everybody in the nation, the test that you took, you came in number 3 in the nation. That's a psychological test. So I went in there still knowing nothing about sales. They didn't give you much training. They threw you on the floor and said, go sell cars. They kind of gave you a little bit of training. There was a guy named Dick Blaine there. And I looked at the board, and his name was number 1 every month. Nobody unseated him. 6 months later, my name was number 1.
All right.
This guy eventually had his own Cadillac dealership, Dick Blaine Cadillac dealership, but I unseated Dick Blaine. But in 1972, I was doing well at that job, making a lot of money, ton of money. Well, in sales, you're either going to make money or you fail. And one day, walked in, and they said, "Everybody come in on Saturday morning and put your demo keys on the table." So we put them on the table. They said, "We are closing up today."
Wow.
Why? Because these Toyotas are coming over into the United States and they are killing us. Gas crisis hit. You saw long lines of cars trying to get gas, and the big guzzlers that we were selling were taking a dent. What it taught me was that you not only have to get a job, but you got to look out for what can affect your job industry-wise.
Right.
And we were selling big cars, and they were selling these compact Toyotas, and that impacted us to the point where it's just a rough feeling to go into work, not knowing you're going to be laid off, but a company actually closing down because of the effect that competitors would have on your business. And I'd never forget that.
Right. Yeah.
And that was my trajectory for the rest of my career, pretty much in sales and from a business aspect. I've sold everything except for, like I tell people today, I never sold real estate, and I never sold radio advertising. And here I am running a radio station.
Okay, so I didn't know that about you when you were in the car industry. So what did you do after that?
It's going to be pretty much in my book, hopefully next year. The one I want to do with you as well. There's two. One is the other one, beside the one we would do. It's called 40 Jobs in 40 Years.
Wow.
A Black Man's Journey Through Corporate America. And the whole concept of the book is that it came to me one day that our generation, me and my brother, we didn't have anyone to mentor us to go into corporate America. If you look at our fathers and Black men at that time, most of them were working in the factory, and they were doing, labor work, which, as we all know now, 2020 hindsight, got farmed out, overseas. So it wasn't anyone you could go to and, say, how do I get a job in corporate America and how do I navigate? And the book that I want to write will teach young people, not only when you get a job, how to keep one, and then politically, because corporate America is about politics as well as your talent.
Yeah.
A lot of people who get to the top don't make it because of their talent. They make it because of their political networking skills. And in 2020 hindsight, if you develop those, you can go a long way in corporate America. Where most people don't make it in corporate America, they think it's based off coming in early, staying late, doing a great job and a lot of work.
Yeah.
That is a good portion of it.
Yeah.
But the real ones who get to the top,
yeah.
And this is somebody who can look back at 2020 hindsight,
yeah.
Politically, they were more astute than the rest in the bunch.
And
so,
I've seen that you've got to be good at what you do, but like yourself, I learned through the years, unfortunately, a lot of people, we think, well, I just do my job. I ain't paid to talk to nobody. I ain't got to smile. I ain't got to, no, you got to do all that stuff.
You got to know who you're doing it with and how they're connected.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stories where at the Christmas party, people got fired because they didn't know so-and-so was sleeping with so-and-so or so-and-so's niece or, that one's daughter. And you have to know the politics of the playing field. And I always say, Black people can play the game. They can play within the bounds. Football, basketball, show me where out of bounds is. They know how to play the game. But what you have to learn in playing that game, not only your talent, but as even in pro leagues, some teams aren't for you. You see players that they don't flourish at one team and they have to go somewhere else. And I'll just use one example, which is prevalent today. Colin Kaepernick, great ball player. Now he's in a political situation because of something he took on himself. And the San Francisco 49ers weren't with him. Yet now there are other teams, and they're kneeling based on what he did. But now he's the man outside looking in.
Right.
So it's not only knowing politics, it's knowing when to use it as well. So otherwise it'll affect your career for sure.
Oh, yeah. So tell us a little bit, just want to, for the sake of time, just want to tell us a little bit about your history in the music industry and things that you've done before, all the way up to now.
And that would take another segment. But to do some bullet points, after leaving, I guess, my music behind and going into all these sales jobs, I got interested. Well, I was always in love with music and playing records. And started playing them at parties, house parties. And in between the 45 dropping off the spindle, people said, "You have a great voice. You need to do radio." And I never thought of it. That is just not one of the things. But I was hearing it so often, Dr. Turpeau, I started to, take it up.
Yeah.
And long story short, I put together a tape at my house at the time. And I don't encourage anybody to do this, especially since I've been a manager in many of the companies that I've worked at and got to director. But I put this tape together and put a little resume, and there was a little, fabrication on the resume saying I worked at this little small radio station that I didn't think anybody would check out. And I emulated this guy named Hank Spann. And that's the guy who died that I keep telling you. It was Reverend Butts at his funeral said, "We need to document these stories." Well, I used to emulate Hank Spann, and I sent my cassette tape to about 4 or 5 radio stations where they were near the water. Naturally, one was near my hometown because I love the beach. Long story short, Yadon Kabir, Jake Jordan. Jake Jordan was the one that hired me. No, actually, Jeff Dixon was. And what he did, he said, "Would you like to work part-time relief?" He looked at the little station that I put down on my resume, and it was 2 years. And I said, "Yeah, that'll be great." So with my luck, and this is what happened to me no matter what happens, this part of the story would always happen to me. He would say, "Okay, I'm going to give you a chance to work at the station, part-time relief. And anybody gets sick, we're going to put you on call, and you'll come in." Great. I'd never been inside a radio station before that interview. So I didn't know anything about it. Long story short, interview ends up, it's 10 minutes to 10. I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm at my car door. He comes to the front door of the radio station and says, "Mike, you got a minute?" I said, "Sure." So he says, comes back. I'm in the lobby. He says, "What are you doing right now?" I said, "I'm just going home, nothing." He says, "Well, Cleo Rose, she called in sick." He said, "How would you like to start work today?" Holy, that's one of those holy moments. And I said, "Yeah." Crazily enough, never have been on air in a radio station prior to. And the guy who was on air at the time, I said, "Is it okay if I go and sit with the guy in the control room?" And I used to listen to him every morning, still calling me. He was a disc jockey, morning disc jockey. Went in there, stood, next to him or aside from the board, watching him for 10 minutes. And at 10 o'clock, you got to go on the air. Well, I watched him. I couldn't learn a lot. It's like going in a cockpit and trying to watch the pilot and knowing you got to land the plane and it's getting ready, and he just had a heart attack. This wasn't death-defying, but it was close. I took over the controls. I knew where the turntables were. I knew which controls were the volume for that. Let's put it this way. Long story short, I figured it out. I wish I had a tape of that first show because, like I said, to everyone listening, record everything you do because you have that capability now with a cell phone. I figured it out. 10 to 3 was a shift. The program director would walk up and down the hallway, which was a glass door, and every time he walked by, I thought he was pulling me off the air when I looked through the glass window, because I was beeping and there were sounds, and I knew, to figure it out, write down on a piece of paper notes just to get me through the shift.
Yeah. And
I made it. And after I left, I was so nervous. I went to a bar. And I must have been at DWI that day because my nerves were a wreck. And they called me back, and I never looked back.
Oh, excellent.
I worked at WNJR, worked at Sirius Satellite Radio, which was my last radio job, and Through the years, it's just the music industry. The one part that I'm leaving out, well, I don't want to leave it out, is when I worked at CBS Records.
Okay.
That was the company that catapulted me. I started off in disco promotion, promoting records. That's where I promoted the first platinum single in the history of the music industry. I tell everybody, it wasn't the Beatles, it wasn't the Rolling Stones, it wasn't Chuck Berry, it wasn't Elvis Presley. The first platinum single was a record I promoted by Johnny Taylor called Disco Lady.
All right.
You can Google that. Yeah. And I promoted that record along with Lou Rawls, many gold records. Lou Rawls, You'll Never Find. I worked with Teddy Pendergrass. I was Teddy Pendergrass's promotion manager when he was doing a lot of concerts in New York. His disco music, even ballads. And that was one of the biggest things that I did, was introduce ballads to discos, because naturally, if my job is disco promotion, if you're putting out a ballad, at that time, everybody wanted to hear thump, 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 thump. But the way I introduced ballads, which was another platinum record for a group that I'm friends with to this day, was the Manhattans, Kiss and Say Goodbye. People wonder, yeah, that's radio play. But where I had to introduce it in the disco was I would take it into to the booth, and the DJs didn't want to play it because it wasn't a disco record.
Right.
I would then go to the owner of the club and say, "You losing money?" And they'd say to me, "How?" I said, "Well, I don't want to get this record played and your DJs won't play it." They said, "Well, how are we losing money?" I said, "When people on the dance floor, they're not drinking." I said, if you play a slow record, it gives them a chance to go get a drink, and then probably, a certain segment is going to slow dance. The owners came back to all the DJs and say, "Play this damn record."
It ain't about dancing, it's about making some money.
So, I got to keep my job naturally, so I have to be innovative on how I'm going to get records played. I introduced ballads to discos because of the fact that I got the owners on my side to say, and that let me know that I had that sales ability that they talked about, and that business sense to figure out how are you going to navigate. So it was a slow record that I introduced to discos, and the owners helped me get it played. And the DJ wasn't going to buck the owner. He could buck me, but he couldn't buck the owner.
Well, that's great stuff.
After leaving CBS, that's when I worked radio. But there's one other story part of that I just have to document. A lot of people look at hip hop and they say, "Where did it really start?" Well, it's funny, but this is a true Hollywood story. I was well known by a gentleman named Joe Robinson. And Joe Robinson had a wife named Sylvia. She made this record Pillow Talk way back in the day. And they started a record label called Sugar Hill Records. I was working at WNJR at the time. Introduced the live broadcasts from a club to WNJR and the Peppermint Lounge. Well, at that time, a club in Newark called Zanzibar was having a live broadcast. And the program director asked me, he said, "Do you want to do it? It's on a Saturday night." Nobody wanted to work on Saturday nights. I said, "Yeah, sure. I don't have anything to do this Saturday." So I went down to the club, and I'm on the air. "This is WNJR Mike T, 1430 a.m. Come on down." So now you're listening to me in the car. And I'm making it sound like, this is the hottest club ever. So now while you're in your car, there's a few people in there. I interview them. They hear a nice woman's voice. They hear a nice guy talking on the microphone with me, and I'm just going around. Long story short, the president of Sugar Hill Records walks in, Joe Robinson. He brings a record to me, the Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight. So I'm on air, but I forgot him. I'm kind of forgetting that I'm on air, but I'm broadcasting from the club.
Okay.
And there's a guy named Hippie, who was doing the turntable. I'm just doing the microphone. Joe brings a record. Long story short, the Sugar Hill Gang, it sounds like Chic. I said, "Hippie, when you get to the bass breakdown of the Chic record, let me play this." So I bring it in, and this is the first time people are hearing a rap record through big speakers. It was a Richard Long sound system. Look him up. He designed custom systems for discos. So they're not only hearing a rap record for the first time, they're hearing it on the best sound system in the world. Everybody goes crazy. You had to be there to see it.
Wow.
So we're experiencing this. And I said, Joe, you got a hit. And he says, yeah, Mike, thanks a lot. He packs it up as his records and he leaves us a copy and he goes on his way. The moral to the story is 30 days later, he called me. He says, Mike, you seem to know about this rap stuff. I said, how's the record doing? He said, it's taking off, man. It's going crazy. He said, but I'm looking for a rap producer. And I said, a rap producer, Joe, you got the first rap record. So then, and I used to do this when I was emceeing shows for the Manhattans, the Moments. I would rap before I brought the groups on. But it was underground. It was nobody knew what it was. I wasn't a comedian, so I did rap to get the audience excited to bring the group on.
Yeah.
So he says to me, well, do you know anybody? I said, well, I got a guy, he's a jazz organist that I believe could produce this. He says, and I could tell over the phone, he was looking at me like I had a third eye.
Yeah.
And he said, jazz? He said, well, send him over and, tell him, that you sent him. So I called Jiggs up, who's a great jazz organist. If you look him up, his name is Clifton Jiggs Chase. This is very important to this story because Jiggs didn't know what rap was. He was a jazz musician.
Right.
And when I said to Joe Robinson, I said, Joe, rap is nothing but syncopated rhythm with words over a groove. And I demonstrated. I said, boom. So, and naturally, I was a jazz musician. I told you I played jazz on Monday nights with some of the greatest. I met Jiggs through Joe Thomas, and Jiggs was the most syncopated organist over Jimmy Smith, Jimmy McGriff, and Charlie Irwin. I would put him top as far as syncopated rhythms on the organ. And it was like a drummer with an organ. I never heard anybody like that. And I'll prove my point in a second. So Jiggs says, yeah, I'll do it, Mike. Sounds interesting. He said, what's rap? And I told him the same thing. It's just syncopated words with rhythm. I said, but Jiggs, do me one favor. And he said, what's that? I said, when you make that rap record, make sure it has a message to it. He said, that makes sense. Okay. All right, man. I'll let you know how it works out. Oh, he let me know how it works out. And this is a very important point for those of you listening to this, wanting to get in the music industry. Document stuff and make sure you get an attorney before you start referring people or doing things for people. I was young and dumb, didn't know. Recommended Jiggs. Jiggs went over, to Sugar Hill. He got the gig and he made a record. And the record he made is on a documentary on YouTube right now. And in the documentary, Ice Cube, Ice-T, Dr. Dre, you name one of the top rappers, and when they interviewed them, they said, what record most influenced your career? And it was the record that Jiggs made, which was Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5. It's called The Message. I didn't tell you to make the title of the song. I said put a message in it.
Yeah.
Now, the syncopated part of that record, if you don't know the record, you'll know it when I do this. It has a hook that says, don't push me, cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. Ha, ha, ha. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep on going under. And that's the message. And Jiggs produced that. And that was a huge record. And what people term today as the birth of hip-hop. So I always say, I'm the godfather of hip-hop. Nobody knows me.
Right.
But without that phone call of how is rap and jazz associated, and when you look up Jiggs' name on Wikipedia, you'll see he's a jazz organist, but he produced that record. So you're looking at the culprit right here.
All right. So I'll look that up. Definitely look that up.
So that's how hip-hop began.
All right. That's great stuff. That's great information for history. People need to know this stuff.
Yeah, that's behind the scenes. Yeah. True story.
So tell us what's going on now. Tell us about the Love Zone USA and what you're doing now presently.
The Love Zone, I put that, kind of gave it to my staff. I have a staff of people, Tony, Denise, I'm sure you've spoken to them from time to time. And I've taken on another project to finance some things that I want to do. One, naturally, from knowing that you and I were going to do a book together, I wanted to get financing for it. So the best way I thought was through some celebrities and their interviews, but the record business is a little different now with this streaming going on.
Right.
So I kind of backed off that. Long story short, I ran into an idea of a portable Bluetooth amplifier, which they were out before I got this idea. I mean, you take a Bluetooth amplifier, you hook two speakers to it, like in the old days with speaker wires. You take your old speakers, you hook them into a Bluetooth amplifier, and most baby boomers have their music on their phones, their tablets, and they want those old records. Now they're downloading them. Now they can't play them through these old speakers that they have in their house, garage, etc. Well, with a Bluetooth amplifier, you can now stream the music from your phone digitally through those stereo speakers. And most people don't know that those stereo speakers are better than the speakers you can buy today, because those speakers back in the day, some of them cost $450,000, which you can get. I don't let everybody know. I want you to take them right off eBay. Go get your pair for $15, $20. They're in great condition. Better than that, they sound great. Wood grain, the way they built them in the past. So long story short, I decided to get involved with this Bluetooth amplifier company. But then I decided to go on my own, because when I was playing it for some kids, they said, well, it's not wireless. I said, what do you mean? I'm streaming my music, to the amplifier through these old speakers. They said, but you're plugging it into a wall. I said, so let me ask you something. If it wasn't plugged in the wall, what would you do? Oh, we take it to the park, to the beach, blah, 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 blah. So found a manufacturer, and I said, can you make this amplifier battery operated? And they said, yes. So, well, I'm a little more educated than I was when I did the jigs thing.
Right.
I looked it up on the U.S. government patent website, because to me as a DJ, and that's what I was most of my life, part-time in between jobs, an amplifier you plug into a wall. There are no battery operated amplifiers. Went to the patent office, checked it out, no such thing. I said, I'm gonna put a patent on this, and I'm gonna get one built.
Good.
So I got this little baby built right here.
All right, very good.
Fits in the palm of my hand. You can put a USB in it, hook two speakers to this, and it streams your music. And you can go to a family reunion in the park, on the beach, 50-yard line at Dallas Cowboys Stadium, put two speakers to it, turn on the volume, and stream your music, or play it through the USB, or if you want to hook your TV in it and hear movies. This is my idea.
Excellent.
And I've already got it in Fry's Electronics, and we've been selling out for a year now. As of August would be a year. It's on Amazon with a 5-star rating.
Excellent.
And I've been manufacturing it, and now we're looking for investments, but we're working on that as well to put it in the big box stores. We have some interest from Walmart, but naturally that's a national rollout. Thank God for working at CBS and knowing what a marketing budget is, working with Michael Jackson and Earth, Wind & Fire. I know the kind of money I need to raise in order to do that, to put this on a national scale. But the behind the scenes thing, this is ground floor, and it is ironically selling on its own, because I don't have a lot of money. Even to this day, I don't have a lot of money. It's selling pretty much on its own, and people are referring it, and it's a good product.
I'm excited, man. I'm excited for you. That's excellent stuff.
Yeah. So this is part of my legacy, a portable Bluetooth amplifier, the patent on it, and it's going to finance everything that we need to do, as well as the station. And like I said, from that, if the numbers yield enough for me to have a national marketing budget for the products that I want to put out. And I mentioned the books, the one you and I talked about doing, the dating, the most comprehensive guide to dating that's ever been written. Naturally, we're going to do an audio book. We're going to have to get somebody, because I don't write. That's part of my basketball thing, that, I wasn't really a good writer, because Mr. Lang said, you don't have to go to that English class. We'll take care of you. And I know you and Miss Avis don't get along too well. So that's where that all came from.
Okay. So if people want to listen to your show, tell them how they can listen to your show.
They can go to our website, www.thelovezoneusa.com. On the top right-hand corner, They can download episodes of it on demand or on Thursday nights live. My show is on from 8 to 10 p.m., which I do every Thursday night, except for when we do reruns. And they can hit us at blogtalkradio.com/The Love Zone USA. And they can hear the show there. Eventually, we're hopefully from the financing from this amplifier, we're going to go to our own server, and we're going to go 24/7. But right now, we're only broadcasting, 5 hours a week. My show 2 hours. Then we have Tony's show on Friday, which is the Countdown. It's a hip hop R&B countdown show. He's like what I call the Casey Kasem of hip hop. And then we have a Girlfriend Network on Monday nights. That's 3 women who I call it, the Girlfriend Network, where, women stay connected. And it's 3 women talking about dating, sex, relationships. And the last one is a good buddy of mine. His name is Rolls Royce. Met him in Philadelphia. He's one of the originators who worked with the guy who originated oldies formats.
Okay.
So he worked with Butterball in Philadelphia, who originated the oldies format. And he does that on Wednesday nights for now with our station.
Okay, well, very good. And then how can people get a hold of this amplifier?
They can go to fries.com online. Fries has 34 stores in only 9 states. They only go as far as, actually, Georgia. They have one in your state. I think it's Duluth. I see it on the report, so I'm not really familiar.
And spell Fries, or what's the website?
FRYS.com. FRYS.com.
Okay.
Fries Electronics, and then they can go to Amazon and order Amazon.com, and you can just type in Masterpiece Bluetooth Amplifier.
Okay.
And you can Google it. You'll see videos on it. The ratings are there. Thank God, knock on wood. It's I figured that from all my, experiences from working at Nextel and the different companies that I've worked for throughout my career, if you make a good product, it'll stand on its own.
Yeah.
But when you get to that fork in the road again, where it's, outgrown, I won't say it's outgrown Fries, but when you get people knocking on your door, like Walmart, you need an advertising budget. And I'm thankful that my CBS experience allows me to know what that will consist of in order to promote it nationally. And we've been talking to some people. I'm still talking to people, and we're going to raise the money. That's doesn't seem to be as big a hurdle as I thought it was going to be, only because as I say, anywhere in life you have to build a resume. Yeah. And in building this resume in the last year with this amplifier, we've got enough. Because the business plan is done, we've got enough bullet points to warrant the revenue we're looking for to put this on a national scale.
Excellent. Good stuff, man. I tell you, I'm just real impressed with just your life story, all the things that you've done, and I've always felt you've been a very interesting guy to talk to, and I'm glad people get to hear more about who Mike T is through this that we did today. So any advice to future generations regarding the music industry, or just entrepreneurship, or just career and life in general?
Absolutely. The biggest word I want to mention today is mentorship. Mentorship. Find you somebody who can mentor you in that industry, especially the music industry. I said it the other day, I think if you go to Yale, Harvard, or Princeton, there's no music industry course that I know of yet. Mm-hmm. So in the music industry, you've got to find someone who knows the ropes. And most of the things I've learned were from people. Mm-hmm. One of the things that was said to me it's an interview on our show that I did with Smokey Robinson. He said, Mike, the music industry is 90% business and 10% music. And he is so right. This is a guy who was vice president of Motown Records. He learned how to write, and you'll hear it in my interview. He learned how to write from Berry Gordy, who, that story is on the show, where Berry used to write for Jackie Wilson. I was going to say Little Richard, but Jackie Wilson. So get you a mentor. That's the most important thing in the music industry. Someone who knows the ropes. Also get you an attorney. This is the music industry, as the kids are saying, can net you the most lucrative income when you look at, as their role models are, Jay-Z and Beyonce, when you're looking at two people that are almost worth $1 billion, one worth 400 million, the other one worth almost $500 million, get you an attorney. Needless to say, if I had an attorney when I did that Jigs deal, that the record kind of created the whole hip hop industry, I wouldn't need financing for this little amplifier today. Mm-hmm. Trust me. Yeah. So those two things I would say from the music industry, and then from what I've learned in entrepreneurship, is your business plan is the most important thing that you will do for your business. Write it down. Yeah, many entrepreneurs have it in their head. They have all the gears in their head, which department, all the components, all the mechanisms of publicity, marketing, accounting, legal. It goes on depending upon the type of company. Write it down and get with someone who is familiar with business plans to help you develop it. Most times, accountants are your best source, because the most important part of a business plan that I'll say to this day is the financials. And if you can justify those financials and get someone to work with you on that, your skill may be making the product. Your skill may be like mine, promotion and marketing. Your skill may be in another area where you came from corporate America. But that's tunnel vision. That's one department. You have to look at the entire picture. And the big picture in any business is the financial aspect. And a lot of people don't want to work with numbers. I get it. Get someone who can. Someone that you're paying to do that, and hopefully someone you can trust. Those are the biggest two pieces of advice that I would give from an entrepreneurship standpoint, and in the music industry, a mentorship standpoint.
And you just mentioned too, what about, because you've been very successful and very good at sales and promotion. Is that just a knack for it, or were there some learnings about sales and promotion and marketing that you can pass on?
Well, good point. I learned promotion and marketing from CBS Records. If you look up I can't think of his name right offhand, an attorney. He started what they call the Black music divisions. Larkin Arnold, that's it. Larkin Arnold. He was the first Black to go to the music industry. He was a lawyer. He started Black music as we know it in, I think it was Capitol initially. The big major record labels wanted at that time to penetrate the Black market. And I want to leave the audience with another thing with LeBaron Taylor, first Black vice president I met at CBS Records. Larkin Arnold was instrumental as an attorney in developing the Black music division, because they wanted to penetrate the Black market with the music, the product, and how to sell it. And they couldn't find anyone to do that. And he was working at an independent label initially. He, to me, is the godfather of the opening up the doors for what labels had back in the 70s. All labels had a Black music division. Mm-hmm. CBS, where I was fortunate to work at, thanks to my mentor, Mike Bernardo, God rest her soul, she brought me in, I got the job, and then I met Jim Terrell, Richard Mack, LeBaron Taylor, Black vice presidents, who would not have been at CBS had not Larkin Arnold opened that door, because the white labels wanted to penetrate the Black music market. Today, you don't have those divisions. You don't have a Black music division or R&B where, well, you do still have charts like that, where kind of records kind of cross over, but you have the Hot 100. And back then you had to cross over. Teddy Pendergrass had to cross over. The OJs and the Earth, Wind and Fires and the Michael Jacksons had to cross over. I'll leave you with two stories. Michael Jackson, I have the most respect for him as a human being, and taking him out on tour one night on a disco tour with his brothers when they came over from Motown to CBS. I took them on a disco tour in the limo. I'm with the limo driver, me and him and his father like that. His father owned the company. And we parked in front of Leviticus. And I told the driver, John, take the car around. We're not going to be here long. Go through the velvet ropes. We sit there. Michael says, not Jackie, not Tito. Jermaine had went to Arista at the time, so he wasn't with it. It was Marlon, Jackie, Tito. Michael said to me, he said, where's John, the limo driver? I said, well, John is with the car, Michael. He's got to stay with the car. And Michael said in his Michael Jackson voice, I'll never forget it. I try to imitate him sometimes, but this is funny. He said, well, I want John to come in and hang with us. He's like family. He's part of us. Have him come in. and get some food and drink. I said, well, he can't drink, and I can get him some food and take it out. He said, no, I want you to bring him in. I go back to the car around the corner. I have John roll down the window. My job is on the line. Either this limo is going to get towed in New York because you can't leave it anywhere, or I'm going to lose my job.
Mm-hmm.
John says, let me figure something out. He came in for a few minutes and then went. Michael was okay. My job, I'm handling one of the biggest groups that CBS Black is going to handle, and this kid, because of his human nature. And when he made that record, I could just say, who cares about the limo driver?
Right.
I like Michael Jackson. The bigger part of that story was people that don't know about him. Walter Yetnikoff was having a problem because MTV wasn't playing Black artists at the time. They weren't playing Black videos. Rolling Stones, White, Bruce Springsteen, we had them on our label. All of that was being played. Walter Yetnikoff, because Michael Jackson says, well, if MTV isn't going to play my videos, I don't want to be with MTV. And Walter Yetnikoff went to MTV and said, if you don't play Michael Jackson, you won't get the Bruce Springsteen and all the other groups that we have, the white acts that they were paying. And it was because of this kid that most artists today don't know. He opened the door for every artist that's on MTV today and broke down all the barriers. So the industry and Black artists primarily, and I want to preach that, they owe a debt to Michael Jackson. Because until he did that, you had to be on an R&B radio station to hear a Black act before it crossed over into white living rooms or white radio. Because Michael did that, a Black record or any record, once it got to MTV, it was in the homes of white people as well as Black people nationally. And that's when crossover kind of dwindled to a degree. He merged the music. So I would say the sales and marketing that we learned at CBS from those guys, LeBron Taylor, who I will I would champion him till the day I die. It was one thing he said while I was on a panel at CBS. He said, we were doing $1 billion in 1976. I remember that. And Black music was $1 billion part of the music industry, just 1/3 of it. And he said, with all these Black executives in here, all the Black executives, and the hottest record at the time was Stevie Wonder. And he on a panel said to everybody, God rest his soul, he says, now you guys are in here as Black executives at some of the major labels in the music industry. He said, but there's two things you need in order to sign the next Stevie Wonder if he were to walk through that door. And this was a Black music convention where you had Black executives and people in promotion and PR people from every label. He said, you need two things. You need the power and the authority to sign the next Stevie Wonder. And he said, until we get that, we don't have what we need in the music industry to make it happen. And I remember that through my entire career because, Beyonce used an expression, Becky with the blonde hair on one of her records. And I always say in HR, we have Blacks who can hire people, but they don't have the authority and the power, to do it without Becky. And that's what we have to learn to do as a people. Other than creating our own companies, which I'm a big proponent of, is that, as LeBron Taylor said, in order to make things and change happen for our people, you need two things, the power and the authority. To have the power with no authority doesn't get the job done. To have the authority with no power, you can't have it. And that stuck with me to this day. And that was one of the most important lessons I learned from a Black vice president, one of the first that I met in the business. And I used to go in his office quite frequently. And he became, somewhat of a mentor as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I tell you, man, I really enjoyed the day, and I'm so glad that you spent time with us for this interview, and I'm excited for people that are going to listen to it and view it. So thank you so much.
You got it, Dr. Turpeau. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
All right. Well, much love to you and all your projects, and let's just keep doing what you're doing.
Okay, we will. And thanks for your help.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.